Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So today we are covering a case that you may have heard of because it has been mentioned everywhere recently, all over the news, all over social media, especially TikTok.
Wilson has received almost 4,000 messages in jail and more than 750 photos, so-called Let Wade Live letters. There's even an online petition that has more than 30,000 signatures.
Because back in 2019, a man called Wade Wilson committed some horrific acts, and we are not talking about Deadpool. That is just a very weird coincidence. The real Wade Wilson committed sexual assault, kidnapping, domestic violence, child cruelty, fraud, before it all ended in a horrific killing spree. And what has happened since then? Well, Wade Wilson has kind of become famous on TikTok, and he hasn't become well known because of the horrific acts that he committed. He has become famous because so many people are fangirling over him. And I'm like, are you serious? He's a murderer. And it's just so unbelievable because thousands of people have been sending Wade Wilson love letters in prison. And so many of them include nude photos saying that they want to sleep with Wade Wilson.
Sheriff's office had to reject 163 of those pictures. Let's just say that they were inappropriate.
And the most infuriating thing about all of these fangirls is that they're saying that he's innocent, or at least he shouldn't be held responsible for his crimes. That is just so disrespectful to the victims of today's case. So we are covering the case of Wade Wilson today, and I'm going to tell you exactly the kind of person he is. So let's jump in. And I just want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, and that is Midas Merch. And you guys know how much I love mobile games, and my latest discovery, Midas Merch, is incredible. You play in this amazing fantasy land with the most adorable creatures you have ever seen in your life. The game was also created by the same designers as The Sims 3 and 4, which tells you a lot about the level of design because it is amazing. And if you guys love fantasy worlds as much as I do, I know you're going to love this game. The storyline is that your fantasy land has been covered in dark shadows by the evil goddess Nyx. And in order to save the realm, you need to team up with all of the adorable creatures, fight the darkness, and restore order to the world. But my favorite part of the whole game is nurturing and discovering all of the tiny, cute, just such adorable characters. There are over 200 to collect. You care for them, you feed them. You can also evolve them by merging them together. And my favorite creatures by far are my crystal fawns. Like, look at them. Are you kidding me? How cute are they? Oh my god, that one is taking a little nap. And I don't know why, but for some reason, they remind me of my little Daisy bear. I don't know why. I think it's the way they run. And the game is just so heartwarming. It's so relaxing. I just love playing this game when I'm snuggled up with my own Daisy bear on the sofa. And if you wanted to check out Midas Merch for yourself, which I highly recommend that you do, then you can download the game for free by using the link in my description box. And using that link instead of going to the App Store really does help out this channel because it lets Midas Merch know that you came from this video. And right now, Midas Merch are giving away a $500 Amazon gift voucher to one lucky player that downloads the game and reaches level 10. And once you've downloaded the game, let me know what your favorite creature is because you know how nosy I am. So thank you again to Midas Merch for sponsoring today's video, but thank you to every single one of you watching, truly, because without all of you guys, I wouldn't get opportunities like this. And now let's jump into today's case. Wade Wilson was born on the 20th of May, 1994, making him a Taurus, where he grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, where he lived with his parents and his two sisters. Now, Wade didn't have the most straightforward start to life. His birth mother was only 14 when she fell pregnant, and his biological dad was only 15. His biological mom also suffered with a load of mental health problems and also medical issues, and she also just felt way too young to care for a baby, meaning that Wade was put up for adoption pretty much straight away. And Wade was adopted by the Wilson family, who were known to his biological parents through a local church. So this is where Wade, who is obviously now Wade Wilson, grew up with his adoptive parents and his two sisters. And to begin with, everything was just pretty normal. He had a load of friends, got good grades, he was very active, played a load of sports, went to church. But then one summer between school terms, when Wade was 13 years old, his personality just completely changed. And it was very sudden, very dramatic. He went from being like a good kid, had loads of friends, quite chilled and relaxed, to then all of a sudden, like literally overnight, becoming reclusive, quite violent, hostile and paranoid. And it was a change that literally did happen overnight. He never wanted to leave the house. He never wanted to interact with any family members, and he was just always very, very angry. And this is when Wade started to believe that there was an alien presence out there wanting to harm him. He was convinced that someone, this alien, wanted to harm him and his family. So every single morning when his mom was cooking breakfast and everyone was getting ready for their day, Wade would run downstairs and all of a sudden just start drawing all of the curtains, because he was convinced that someone was watching the house and that they were going to come and attack him and his family at any moment, and everyone needed to hide. And Wade's mom would get really, really angry at this, because he would do this every single day, and she would say, Wade, like, please stop doing this every single day. But then Wade would just get angry at her, because in Wade's mind, he thought that he was protecting the whole family. And he would say, you just don't get it. There's someone out there. There's someone out to get us. I'm just trying to protect everybody. There was even a time when Wade told his father that there was a bomb in the garage that was going to explode and kill everybody. And in the end, his father did call out the police, because he thought, well, what about if there is a bomb in the garage and I didn't listen to my son? But as you can imagine, there was no bomb in the garage. It was all just in Wade's head. Now, it's clear to everybody that Wade is struggling with his mental health. It is also said around this time that he was suffering with depression and anxiety. And it has been reported that his parents did try and seek help for him, but nothing really came out of that. And then not long after Wade started having these like visions and these delusions, Wade turned to drugs to cope. And this is when he is only 13 years old. So I do want to stress he is incredibly young, and he became addicted to drugs straight away. So at the age of 13, he has a pretty serious drug addiction to heavy drugs as well. Like, he is taking meth and cocaine. Now, these drugs only made his mental health even worse, his depression even worse. The drugs made him suicidal, and he would have constant mood swings, and his aggression and anger now was just off the charts. He also became incredibly difficult at school, difficult at home, just difficult to manage. He was always getting into fights because he has an incredibly volatile and violent side. Police were called out to deal with him multiple times. There was even one time where he was involuntarily committed to a mental health facility to try and help him and trying to get everything under control. It just seemed to be getting more and more out of hand, and nothing seemed to be working to help him. On top of all of this, when Wade is 18 years old, he suffered several very serious head injuries. He received a concussion after being hit in the head whilst he was playing baseball. He also received a concussion when he was playing American football. There was even a time when Wade was in a car not wearing a seatbelt, and the car crashed into a tree, and he went straight headfirst into the dashboard. And this injury from the car accident was serious. It was life-threatening. He went to hospital. He obviously did recover, but then just a couple of years later, the same thing happened again. Wade got into another car accident and received a serious head injury. And then between all of these head injuries, Wade overdosed on narcotics and suffered a serious, terrible seizure. So with everything, all of the injuries, the seizure, everything, it left Wade with a very serious brain impairment. So Wade is now 18 years old. He has left school and he decides that he's going to turn to crime. And he soon starts to build up an extensive criminal history. He was arrested and thrown in jail so many times. I do not have time to list out every single one. And he was charged with pretty much every single offense under the sun as well, like trespassing, fraud, burglary, robbery, child cruelty, and even sexual assault and more. And for every single time, he would only get a very short prison sentence, which is just mind-blowing for a career criminal. And every single time he was released from prison, he would just go and commit more crime. And it's like, why aren't you sending him to prison for a longer period of time to hopefully make him learn a lesson? And it was around this time when Wade got back in touch with his biological dad. Now, obviously, his biological dad was only 15 years old when Wade was born, so he's only currently 33 at this point. So his biological dad is still incredibly young. And this is when Wade decided to use his biological dad as basically a walking ATM. That was the only thing that he was interested in. He just wanted money from his biological dad to fund his drug addiction and any criminal activity. Wade never had any kind of concept of looking after himself. He would always just run to somebody else to fix his problems. And now a few more years pass, and Wade's life, we don't know too much about what's going on. He's obviously going in and out of prison all of the time. And during these few years, he does get into a few romantic relationships. And we don't know too much about these individual relationships. We just know that he was moving from one relationship to the next very quickly. We also know that he got one woman pregnant and had a child with her, a little baby girl. And even though we don't know too much about all of these individual relationships, what we do know is that in every single relationship that Wade was in, he was abusive. He would beat his partners black and blue. He was just a completely awful person to be around. And he was your typical textbook abuser. Manipulative, cunning, charming. But that isn't even the worst of it. We will soon learn just how much of a monster Wade Wilson truly is. Because first of all, in 2015, Wade went to a party where he met a woman and they kind of hit it off. They went back to Wade's car to smoke some marijuana before Wade turned incredibly violent towards this woman. He ordered the woman to get into the back seat of the car. He choked her around the neck with both of his hands, and he repeatedly threatened to shoot her if she didn't comply with his demands. This is when Wade sexually assaulted the woman in the back of this car and filmed the whole thing on her mobile phone. Yeah, not his. He didn't get his own phone out. No. He stole the woman's phone and filmed the whole sexual assault on her phone. So after this assault happened, the woman immediately went to the police to press charges. Wade went to court and everything, but he was acquitted because he told the jury that the whole thing was consensual, that the woman just liked it rough. Even though there's actual evidence, physical evidence, because he filmed the whole assault on a phone, but he managed to convince a whole jury that it was consensual, and that is how manipulative and charming he is. However, in 2018, Wade is back in prison, God knows for what charges, because he's in and out all the time on various different charges. But currently, 2018, he's in prison. And this is when something just so crazy and unbelievable would happen that would put Wade Wilson into news headlines before he even became a murderer. So have you guys heard of the Mike Williams case? It's very well known. I haven't covered it on this channel. Maybe I will at some point in the future. But just to give you a brief summary of that case, a man named Mike Williams went missing in 2000 by what people thought was from a boating accident where he accidentally got eaten by alligators. Well, 18 years after that, in 2018, it was discovered that Mike Williams' death was not an accident. He was not eaten by alligators. He was actually killed by his wife, Denise Williams, and her new lover, Brian Winchester. It is said that Denise and her lover, Brian, framed the whole thing, made the death look like an accident, that he was eaten by alligators because they were having an affair. And they had gotten away with this murder for 18 years. And I know what you're thinking. What the hell does this have to do with Wade Wilson? Well, I'm getting there. Because Brian Winchester, the lover, he was currently in prison for other charges. And whilst Brian was in prison, this is when the murder allegations against Denise and Brian started to come to light. And obviously Brian is in prison and he is panicking. He is thinking, oh no, I'm going to get caught for this murder that I committed 18 years ago. I need to do something. And Brian thought to himself, I need a way to shut Denise up. I cannot have her dragging me down. And this is when Brian is in prison. And guess who is an inmate with Brian? Wade Wilson. So Wade decided to go up to Brian and say, hey, when I get out of prison, if you give me enough money, I will kill Denise for you. Yeah, and that is the very Wade Wilson that we are talking about today. Before he committed any murders himself, whilst he was in prison, he was offering himself up to be a hitman for Brian Winchester to kill Denise Williams, which I just think is absolutely crazy that Wade Wilson has inserted himself into another true crime case. Now, when Wade did get out of prison, he didn't follow through. However, during the court trial for the murder of Mike Williams, this assassination plot all came out in court, and Wade Wilson was named as one of the hitmen in all of the newspapers at the time. And this all happened before Wade committed any of the murders or before he even became famous on TikTok. And I didn't actually know that Wade Wilson was tied to the case of Mike Williams before I started my research. And when I found that out, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, oh my God. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, and that was kind of like a sidebar to this case, but I had to include it because it just blew my mind. So anyway, after that whole assassination thing, everything. It's now the end of 2018. Wade is now 24 years old, and we are fast approaching the horrific events of today's case. So Wade is obviously out of prison now, and he gets into a relationship with a woman called Kelly Matthews. And Kelly has actually spoken out about her relationship with Wade Wilson, and she's spoken out about it on TikTok, and I will leave a link to all of her videos in the description box. So after you finish watching this video, definitely go and watch those. But Kelly and Wade first met on the dating site Plenty of Fish. They went out on a few dates and they started seeing each other more and more. And as far as Kelly could tell, everything was completely fine. Like, Wade was a great guy. However, everything about Wade was just completely fake. Because when Wade first introduced himself to Kelly, he said, "Hi, my name is Stephen." So for their entire relationship, Kelly thought that Wade's name was Stephen. On top of this, Wade was also currently living in a halfway house because he had just recently gotten out of prison. And again, Kelly didn't know about this. He also lied about the fact that he had a child. He was like, yeah, no, I don't have any children. But to be fair to Wade, he's probably a deadbeat dad, so he probably doesn't think he has any children anyway, even though he does. Wade also said that he didn't do drugs. Even though he's a very heavy drug user and also a drug dealer himself. And because Wade lied to Kelly about all of this, Kelly didn't see Wade for who he truly was because he was very good at hiding himself. So the relationship continues. Wade moved into Kelly's home in Florida. They lived together for about 5 to 6 months. Everything was great. Wade was the perfect boyfriend. They went on so many dates, living their best life. Kelly introduced Wade, or should I say Stephen, to her friends and family. But then one day when Kelly and Wade were out together, Wade all of a sudden just started taking a load of cocaine in front of her. And Kelly was like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? I thought you didn't do drugs. I thought you didn't like drugs. And this was almost like the first thing that opened up Kelly's eyes to who Wade actually was. And she started paying more attention to him. And she started finding drugs around the house and crack pipes. And she started to confront Wade about this, but they would always just get into these huge arguments. And Wade, as we know, he's an incredibly aggressive person. So these arguments would turn very aggressive to the point where Wade actually kicked down Kelly's back door and threatened to kill her dogs. And after this incident, things now in the relationship just continue to get worse and worse. It's almost like Wade was no longer hiding who he truly was anymore. So Wade started to isolate Kelly from her friends and family. He started to steal money from her, control every aspect of her life. Like I said, textbook abuser. He also started to repeatedly cheat on Kelly, and Kelly just had to put up with it. There was even one time when Wade and one of Kelly's own friends, and she clearly wasn't a friend, okay? So there was one time when Wade and one of Kelly's friends ran away to Texas together, cleaned out Kelly's home and stole all of her belongings, which is just insane. So Kelly went to the police about this, and the police did nothing. Wade ended up running back to Kelly, begging for forgiveness. And because Wade was incredibly charming and manipulative, Kelly took him back. So Wade has wormed his way back into Kelly's life, you know, being the best boyfriend ever. But things do not stay like that for long. Because on the 18th of February 2019, 6 months into the relationship, an absolutely terrible incident occurred. Because on this day, Wade and Kelly were having quite a long discussion about Wade going to rehab. Because this is something that Wade had promised to do. This was probably one of his promises to get Kelly back. You know, when he begged for forgiveness, he was probably like, oh, Kelly, I'm so sorry. I'll go to rehab. I'll do whatever you want. Obviously, Wade had no intention of going to rehab. And when it came down to him going to rehab, he was flat out refusing. And this really annoyed Kelly because it broke her trust again and it descended into an argument once again. However, for some reason on this day, Wade started to escalate things dramatically. He was about to take things to a whole other level. And I need to warn you now, this is going to be very difficult to hear. So during this argument, they were actually out driving. And when the car was pulled over, Wade reached over to Kelly, wrapped his hands around her throat and just started to choke her. And after choking Kelly, he then started to violently assault her. He busted her lip. He slammed her foot in the car door. He bit into her ear, then her chin. Her whole face was pouring with blood. And then after this physical assault, Wade pulled out a pocket knife and started cutting all of Kelly's clothes off. Her t-shirt, her pants, her underwear, her bra, like everything, and leaving Kelly naked. He then threw her in the back of the car. He tied her up using the pieces of clothes, and then he started violently sexually assaulting her. And after this sexual assault, Kelly was left bloody and bruised and traumatized. She was in such a terrible state, and Kelly has actually shared images of her injuries and what she looked like, and I will not be sharing them in this video, but you can see on the photos the bruising around her neck where Wade choked her, her busted lip, and they are just so horrific and so disturbing, which is why I will not be sharing them in this video. And then whilst Kelly is in this terrible state after the physical and sexual assault, Wade then gagged her, blindfolded her, left her in the back of the car naked, and just covered her with a blanket. He then stole her phone, met up with a drug dealer, sold her phone to buy drugs, before he then went to McDonald's and went through the drive-through with Kelly in the back of the car, naked, just covered in a blanket, and she was gagged. Which is sick beyond words. This man is a monster. How has he just violently assaulted his girlfriend, sexually assaulted her, and then just gone to McDonald's through the drive-thru with her in the back of the car? And then after his little trip to McDonald's, Wade started driving around for a couple of hours, like playing mind games with Kelly. Before then, Wade stopped the car, handed the keys to Kelly, and said that he was going to go and hook up with another woman. And Kelly was absolutely traumatized by what had happened to her. She took the keys, she got into the driver's seat. She did not care one bit that Wade was going to cheat on her. And she went straight to the police to report what Wade had done to her. But they did nothing. Even though Kelly went to the hospital, they did a sexual assault kit, took photos of her injuries, gathered the evidence of the assault and the sexual assault. And even though Kelly had all of this, the police were not interested. Because when the police did bring in Wade for questioning, Wade just went to the same excuse that he used before. Oh, it was all consensual. You know, Kelly likes it rough. So because Wade said this, the police closed their investigation. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. So because Wade got away with this horrific crime, he would soon go on to harm even more women. And then almost straight away after leaving Kelly, Wade got into a relationship with another woman, started abusing her. He then got into a relationship with a man and he stabbed him. And pretty much every single relationship that Wade gets into, he starts abusing people. And then Wade, he's currently got a new girlfriend, and this new girlfriend got in contact with Kelly, his ex, and she revealed to Kelly that Wade had tied her up, beat her up, and then left her naked in a parking lot, which is pretty much exactly what happened to Kelly. Wade is completely unhinged at this point, and the police just don't seem to care. And then in April of 2019, 6 months before the tragic events of today's case, Wade meets a woman called Melissa Montanez, who goes by Mila. And Mila plays a very significant role for the rest of today's case. Because Wade and Mila, they met through a mutual friend. They entered into a sexual relationship pretty much straight away. They moved in together, and pretty much straight away, Wade started being abusive. He would beat Mila pretty much every single day, black and blue. He also started to sexually assault her. Mila went to the police multiple times in the first few weeks of their relationship, but the police did nothing. And every single time Mila left Wade, she ended up at some point taking him back very quickly. Like I've said, Wade is a textbook abuser. He would abuse Mila and then manipulate and charm her into forgiving him. And Mila felt completely trapped and isolated in this relationship. And just 2 months into their relationship, something absolutely horrific occurred. And this all started with some text messages on Mila's phone. Now, we don't know who these text messages were off. We don't know if they were off an ex-boyfriend, friend or just another man or even a friend or a family member. We just don't know who these text messages were off. What we do know is that Wade was not happy about them. And he got so angry to the point where he grabbed Mila by the neck, started choking her, and choked her until she passed out. Now, when Mila came round, she did manage to escape relatively unharmed. But then just a few days later, the same thing happened again. And both times Mila managed to escape relatively unharmed. However, it would happen for a third time. And the consequences would be much, much worse. Because one day Mila was out driving and some more text messages came through on her phone. And once again, Wade went absolutely crazy and a huge argument broke out between the two of them. And whilst they are still driving, Wade literally jumps on Mila and starts beating her, like beating the life out of her. And Mila was absolutely terrified. I mean, she knew what Wade was capable of, but there was something different in this moment. The look in his eye, she was genuinely terrified that he was going to kill her in that moment. So she jumped out of the car, she tried to flee, but Wade grabbed onto her skirt and literally tore it off of her body. And on this day, Mila was not wearing any underwear, so she was literally just left in her t-shirt. And Mila tried to flag someone down, but the problem is that no one was around. So she was trying to run for her life, literally, but Wade managed to catch up to her, grabbed her by the neck, and just started to choke her again until she passed out. However, unlike the previous two times, the attack would now go further. Because Wade went back to the car, he pulled out an electrical cord and he tied Mila's hands behind her back. Mila woke up at this point and she was kicking and screaming. She was trying to break free, but Wade also tied her feet together. This is when Wade shoved Mila back into the car and blindfolded her. He then dragged her to a nearby boat, dragged Mila inside, threw her on the floor, and started to sexually assault her, which included anal penetration. And this was the worst thing that had ever happened to Mila in her whole life. She was so terrified. She didn't know if Wade was going to kill her after this. And the whole time, through the whole sexual assault, Wade just kept repeatedly saying that he was only doing this to teach her a lesson. And then after this horrific sexual assault, Wade continued to beat Mila on a daily basis. They got into an argument again whilst they were driving. I don't know what it is with Wade. Like, he likes to get into arguments with women in cars. I don't know what it is, but they got into another huge argument in the car. Now, thankfully, this time Mila managed to flee on foot and she went straight to the police. And Mila detailed what had happened to her on the boat just a few days prior, and the police could see her injuries. She had bruises all over her arms and legs. She had 2 black eyes. And thankfully, the police did something at this point and they arrested Wade, and he was held on bail for the next 3.5 months. But whilst he was being held in jail awaiting trial, he kept phoning Mila up every single day, pleading with her to forgive him, saying that he was going to be a changed man, and he manipulated Mila into dropping the charges. So in October of 2019, Wade Wilson is a free man again. And it's just so infuriating. This man should be in prison. He shouldn't be free. He shouldn't be walking around. He has attacked so many people. Why do the police either not do anything, or why does the criminal justice system keep repeatedly giving him short prison sentences when he has not once ever proved that he has changed? So now that he has been released from jail, Wade jumps straight back into his relationship with Mila and carries on living his life. However, this time it was going to be slightly different because Wade is about to completely unravel. And just a few days after he is released from jail, that is where we get to the terrible events of today's case. Because on the 6th of October 2019, which is the day before the terrible events of today's case, Wade and Mila, along with Mila's friend Amy, they all went to a bar. And whilst they were at the bar, they were hanging out, having a few drinks, having fun. And later on that evening, Mila and Amy, they wanted to go home. They wanted to leave. But Wade started acting weirdly. Like, there was just something weird about him. He was acting really off. And Wade came over to Mila and Amy with a stranger that he had literally just met in the bar. And this stranger, his name was Jason. And Wade was acting like Jason was his best friend. So Wade and Jason went over to Mila and Amy, and Wade wanted everyone to go back to Jason's house, like carry on the party there. But Mila said, No, I don't want to go back to this stranger's home. I want to go home. But Wade was incredibly forceful. He was not taking no for an answer. And the problem is that Wade had Mila's car keys in his pocket and he was refusing to hand them over. He said he would only give back the car keys if she agreed to drive them all back to Jason's. And Mila was just getting really fed up. She just wanted to go home. So Mila and Amy had no choice but to call an Uber. And she was just going to leave her car at the bar, which she was not happy about. So she left her $80,000 car behind in Wade's possession and she went home with her friend. So Wade was now at the bar with his new best friend Jason, but the night was far from over because Wade and his new best friend, they have a few more drinks. And this is when Wade came across a woman that he was instantly attracted to, who was a woman called Christine Melton. Now, Christine at this point was 35 years old. She was an animal lover, an incredible friend, and an incredible aunt to her nieces and nephews. And there was one thing that Christine couldn't wait to do in life, and that was to be a mother herself. And on the 6th of October 2019, she was in the same bar as Wade with her friend Stephanie. She was obviously not with Wade, she was just with her friend Stephanie, and they were having a good time. So Wade, he is now instantly attracted to Christine, doesn't care at all that he's actually got a girlfriend because we know he cheats on everyone that he's with. He goes over to Christine, introduces himself as Junior. Yes, he's still giving out fake names to everyone. He bought Christine and her friend a drink and they all get along great. The night is going well. And the night went so well that Christine and Stephanie ended up going home with Wade. So they left the bar at around 2 a.m, which was closing time. And Wade, because he has the keys to Mila's car, he pulls out the keys from his pocket. He hands them to his new best friend Jason, and Jason drives the four of them, so Jason, Wade, Christine and Stephanie, he drives them all back to his house. When they get back to the house, they have a few more drinks, they smoke some weed. Wade, Jason and Christine also take cocaine. And then this is when Wade and Christine went into Jason's room so they could have sex. And then at around 5 a.m. in the morning, Jason decides that he no longer wants anyone in his home and he kicks everyone out. So then Wade has the brilliant idea of driving everyone home. And again, he's going to drive everyone home in Mila's car. So now the three of them get into Mila's car. Wade turns the engine on, he goes to drive them home, and he attempts to reverse off of the drive, but the car doesn't move. He's just putting his foot down and the car is making a lot of noise. And the car is not moving because it's a manual, or should I say stick shift. In the US, that's what you call it, isn't it? So yeah, the car is a manual and he can't drive manual. So he literally had no idea how to drive a manual. So he's just putting his foot down, thinking that the car was just going to move. So in the end, he had no choice but to call an Uber so that Wade, Christine and Stephanie finally arrived back to Christine's house. Once they were at Christine's house, it was like 5:30 in the morning. Stephanie says that she's going to head home because she's got to get ready for work the next morning and she just wants to be at her own home. So Stephanie gave Christine a hug goodbye and told her that she would speak to her later on in the day. These two had been best friends since high school, so they were inseparable. They spoke every single day. But tragically, Stephanie didn't realize that this would be the last time she ever saw her best friend alive. Because not long after Stephanie left, Christine and Wade headed up to Christine's bedroom to just get some more sleep. But not long after Christine fell asleep, Wade was just lying there watching her. He was watching Christine's chest just rise and fall. And this is when Wade was overcome with a sudden urge that he wanted to kill Christine. We have no idea where this urge came from. We have no idea what exactly was going through Wade's mind at this point. But tragically, this is when Wade climbed onto Christine, wrapped his hands around her throat and just started to choke her. And he continued to do this until Christine lost her life, which is just so tragic. This woman only met Wade a few hours prior. It was just completely and utterly senseless. And then after he has murdered Christine, he stayed in her house for a little while trying to figure out what he was now supposed to do with her body. This is when Wade realized that he didn't have his mobile phone on him. He left it at his new best friend's house, Jason's. So this is when Wade picks up Christine's phone, decided that he was going to steal it, but in order to unlock the phone needed a Face ID, so he took the phone over to Christine's deceased body and used her face to unlock the phone, which is just on another level of sick. Afterwards, he then took Christine's body, rolled it up in a rug, tried to drag it out to Christine's car, but then realized it was too heavy. So he just left Christine's body in the middle of her home, stole Christine's car keys, and then stole her car and fled the scene. So Wade has now just taken the life of his first victim. But is he done yet? No. Things are about to get even worse. Wade was currently full of adrenaline from the murder, and sadly, he wanted more of it. So after fleeing Christine's, where does Wade decide to run back to? Well, that is his girlfriend, Mila. Now, it was around 8 a.m. at this point. Mila was still asleep. She had actually stayed over at her friend Amy's home, and Wade just started repeatedly calling Mila from Christine's phone. But Mila was asleep, so she wasn't answering, and Wade was getting so angry that she wasn't answering. Mila woke up just before 9 a.m. and she looked at her phone and saw she had all of these missed calls from a random number that she didn't know. And then when she was holding the phone, this random number started calling her again. So Mila answered the phone and said, "Who is this?" And on the other end of the phone, Wade said, "It's Wade." And at this point, Mila was so furious with Wade because of what he had done the night before. She was like, "Wade, what are you doing? Where is my car? Just bring my car back. I want my car. I need to go to work." But the car was obviously stranded at Jason's. Wade didn't have Mila's car. But Wade pretended that he had the car, and he was like, "Oh, I'm driving to you right now. Like, you'll have your car in a minute." But Mila said, "I'm not at home. I'm at my friend's house. I'll meet you at my place of work." And Mila actually owned her own business downtown. It was a place called Mila's Spa. So she was like, "I'll meet you there." So Mila and Amy, they worked together. They got ready for work. When they arrived at work, Wade was there waiting for them, but he wasn't in Mila's car because obviously he's driving Christine's car, and Mila was just so fed up because Wade pulled this kind of stuff all the time. This was kind of normal to her for Wade to just be a complete idiot. And Mila was like, "Oh, for God's sake, what is he doing now? Where is my car? I just want my car." So Mila gets out of the car. She tells her friend Amy to stay in the car because she knows what Wade is like and she doesn't want Amy exposed to it. Mila goes over to the car, knocks onto the driver's side window. Wade puts the window down and Mila says, "Where's my car? Like, what is going on? Just give me back my car." This is when Wade literally snarls at her and says, "Get in the car now." And Mila was like, no way in hell am I getting in the car with you. Enough has happened to Mila for her to know she should not get in that car. But this is when Wade just gives her a death stare before lunging at her, and he tries to drag Mila into the car through the driver's side window. He hasn't even opened the door. Like, he's trying to drag her through the window. Mila is terrified, but she just keeps thinking over and over in her head, "I cannot let him get me in that car. I am not letting him get me in that car. I have to escape." So she threw her arms out into like a plank position, and she completely stiffens her body to make it as long as possible and just to make it so difficult for Wade to get her in the car through the window. But Wade is pulling with all of his strength to try and get Mila into the car, and he is pulling so hard that he nearly rips her dress off. But Mila stays firm in that plank-like position, and he is unable to get her through the window. So instead, Wade throws the door open and lunges at Mila, and they both fall to the ground. Wade forgot to put the car in park, so the car literally starts to roll forward. It actually starts to roll forward into Wade and Mila. It grazes both of their legs before it then rolls into another car. And this is when Wade, in broad daylight, in front of people, in a busy area, just starts to repeatedly punch Mila. He is slapping her in the face. He is pulling her hair. He's pulling her hair extensions out. He's literally pulling the extensions out and leaving hair everywhere. And then Wade starts to viciously choke Mila. At this point, Mila's friend Amy is still in her car, and she is frozen in terror. She does not know what to do, but she starts to get out of the car to help her friend. And then Wade turns to Amy and says, "Amy, if you get out of that car, I will kill you." So Amy gets straight back into her car, but she dials 911. And as Amy is doing this, Wade suddenly has a change of heart. It's almost like he realizes that he's literally trying to kill Mila in broad daylight possibly in front of people. So he grabs Mila by her dress and starts dragging her towards her business to take her into somewhere private. And again, Mila is just having that same thought over and over again. I can't let him take me somewhere private. If he gets me inside of my business, he is going to kill me. But Wade is dragging her towards her business. There is some stairs and there's a railing, and Mila grabs onto that railing and she holds on for her dear life. And Wade is so infuriated, he just starts punching Mila in the face over and over again to try and get her to loosen her grip on the railing. And at this point, Mila is trying to reason with Wade, even though there's no reasoning with a person like this. But Mila is actually being incredibly intelligent at this point because she's trying to stall. She knows that her friend Amy in the car would have dialed 911. She knows it's only a matter of time before police arrive. So she's just trying to draw this out, distract Wade, buy herself some time. But there is no reasoning to Wade. His eyes were like black holes. He was dead inside. He had the look in his eye of a serial killer. And Wade punched Mila so hard in the middle of her face. And there was this crunching noise. Her nose was broken, but her nose basically exploded. Like blood just went everywhere. And the blood splattered all over Wade. And he was not expecting this. It took him by surprise. And this bought Mila a few precious seconds. Even though she was in so much pain, she ran for her life. And this is when Wade heard police sirens in the distance. And he knew that those sirens were for him. So he runs back to Christine's car, jumps in it, and drives off. And infuriatingly, he manages to get away. But thankfully, the main thing here is that Mila was still alive. Battered and bruised, yes, but still alive. So Wade speeds off after the police arrive at the scene, and Mila tells the police what has happened, but she has no idea the direction that Wade has gone in. But was Wade done? No. Sadly, he was not, and he was about to find his next victim. Because it is now 9:30 in the morning, Wade is speeding down the street in Christine's black Nissan, and this is when Wade spots a woman just walking on the sidewalk, and her name was Diane Ruiz. Diane was 43 years old. She was a mother to two sons, Brandon and Zane. She was engaged, and she worked at a nearby bar, and she was just described as someone that had an amazing personality and infectious laugh, and she loved her two boys more than anything else in this world. And on this morning, Diane, she was just walking to work, minding her own business, when Wade Wilson pulls up next to her in the car, and he starts spouting this fake story that he needs directions to a local school. And he asks Diane to get inside the car so she can give him directions on how to get there. Now, we don't know if Diane willingly got in the car. We don't know if she was threatened or coerced in some kind of way. All we know is that Diane did get in the car. And as soon as she did, Wade wrapped his hands around her neck and started to choke her. At this point, Wade is just completely unhinged. It is very clear that he is not going to stop attacking people until someone stops him. Diane tried to fight Wade off, but he completely overpowered her and she passed out. Now, after Diane passed out, Wade drove to a nearby parking lot, which was completely surrounded and hidden by trees. And then he put Diane's body onto the ground. And as he did this, he noticed that Diane was still breathing. So Wade thought to himself, well, he can't have that. She's got to die. So then Wade climbed back in his car and proceeded to run over Diane. But he didn't just run over her once, he kept doing it. Back and forth, back and forth. And he just kept running over her body to make sure she was dead. And then later on, Wade has described Diane's body looking like spaghetti after he was done. And sadly, because of the injuries of being run over, Diane Ruiz lost her life. And again, this is just such a tragic, senseless murder. She was just walking down the street, going to work, minding her own business, and then Wade Wilson has just murdered her and taken her away from her two sons. So then afterwards, Wade dragged Diane's body, dumped it in a nearby wooded area, and then just fled the scene. So now Wade goes into a little bit of a cool down period. He just drives around aimlessly for a few hours until he pulled up in a parking lot of a restaurant called Joe's Crab Shack, and Wade arrived there at around 3 p.m. But what Wade didn't realize is that the police were on his trail for his attack on his girlfriend Mila. The police had no idea that he's murdered 2 people. They're only looking for him for the assault on his girlfriend. But anyway, police get a tip that Wade is in the parking lot of this restaurant and he's just sat in his car without his shirt on. And I'm pretty sure this tip actually did come from Mila. I think Wade was trying to get in touch with her again and she clearly found out where he was. So a nearby officer responds to this call. He goes out to the parking lot and you can see all of this on body cam footage. You can see that Wade is just sat in the car. He doesn't have a shirt on. And the officer walks over to Wade saying that he needs to detain him. And Wade says, like, why? What for?
I'm going to detain you until I figure out what exactly is going on.
And I assume that Wade's mind is racing because he has murdered 2 people. But the officer says for the battery this morning, so the assault on his girlfriend.
About this morning.
And Wade is like, oh, okay. I'm still getting away with the murders. Good. So the officer tells Wade that he just needs to stay calm, stay in his car for another officer to arrive so they can arrest him. But a couple of minutes go by and Wade is visibly getting very agitated. He's losing control and the officer can see that at any moment this situation can escalate. So the officer says, Wade, give me the car keys, like just stay calm, just hand over the keys because he's a flight risk.
Let me see the keys to the car. Let me see the keys to the car. Wait, we're not gonna have any problems. Just give me the keys to the car.
And that's exactly what happens because Wade ignores the officer, winds up the window, and he speeds off.
Don't go anywhere. Hey.
But at this point, the officer thinks that Wade is only wanted for domestic violence, not for murder. So they decide not to chase after him because that could cause danger to just pedestrians on the street. And it's just not worth putting innocent people at risk. So Wade has escaped once again. And now he tries to find someone else to help him. So he drives to a nearby print shop. And inside this shop, there is a man that works there called Josh. And Wade and Josh are familiar with one another. They're not friends, they're friendly. So Wade goes into the shop and he's like, Josh, I need your help. And all of this can be seen on CCTV. And Josh looked at Wade and he was shocked because of what Wade looked like. One, he doesn't have a shirt on. He only has grey sweatpants on. He has no shoes on and he's covered in blood. He's also missing a couple of teeth and we have no idea how that happened. And he's also acting so frantic. He's just like pacing all around the shop and he's like, Josh, I need your help. I wouldn't be surprised if he is on some kind of drug. He kept saying, Josh, I need you to buy me a ticket out of here. I need a bus ticket or a plane ticket. I need anything. I just need to get out of here. Then Wade, just out of the blue, says, Josh, you don't understand. I killed people last night. He just comes out with it. He's not hiding behind what he's done. And at first, Josh thought that he was joking. But then the look in Wade's eye told Josh that he wasn't. He was telling the truth. So Josh tries to stay calm and he says, okay, Wade, I'm just going to go in the back and I just need to phone somebody, like, to get you help. Like, I'm going to help you. So Wade, thinking that Josh is actually going to help him, allows Josh to go into the back room to phone somebody, but Josh actually goes into the back room to dial 911. So police are already rushing over to the print shop, but by the time Josh goes back out to the front of the shop, Wade has already disappeared. He has fled the scene once again. So police arrive at the print shop. Wade is long gone. However, what the police do find is Christine's black Nissan because Wade fled on foot. And when the police investigate and search the car, it was covered in blood, like so much blood. And the police were actually scared about opening the boot of the car because they thought that there was going to be a body in there. But obviously they didn't find a body in the car. Now they tracked down the owner of the car, which was obviously Christine. So the police are repeatedly calling Christine, but obviously she's not answering. So they somehow got in contact with Stephanie, who was Christine's best friend. And obviously Stephanie was at the bar with Christine the night before, so she knew who Wade was. And the police say to Stephanie, like, we found your best friend's car. Like, where is she? Like, is she missing? Like, what's going on? And Stephanie went into a huge panic. She said that the last time she saw her best friend was just this morning, and they had been with a strange man that they had met the night before. And the only thing that they knew about this strange man was that his name was Jr. So police now are fearing the worst when it comes to Christine. They immediately rush over to her home and they discover Christine's body just lying in her own home. And now Wade Wilson is also wanted for murder. So the police really stepped up their efforts now to find Wade because obviously he's now wanted for murder. So Wade now knew that he had to hide out. So how was he going to do this? He decided that he was going to break into strangers' homes and just hide out there. So he found a random house. He opened up the gate. He tried to get into the house, but the house was all locked up. He couldn't get in, but he found that the garage was open. So he went into the garage. He found the car in there. And unfortunately, the car was unlocked. So Wade got into the car and then he peed in the coffee cup holder. Yeah, you heard that right. Wade decided to go into this car and just randomly pee in the coffee cup holder. Who does that? Who does that? Like, he could literally wee in the bush. But why? What possessed him to do that? Moments later, the homeowner actually came back and she saw Wade running out of her garage. So she went into the garage, she went into the car, and she found the puddle of pee in the coffee cup holder. And it's like, why? It's just so disgusting. Why? So then after this, Wade decided to break into another home. And this time he actually did manage to get inside the home. Fortunately, no one was home because God only knows what Wade would have done if he broke into that home and there was actually someone there. So Wade now has this house to himself. And he really does decide to make himself at home. He crashed there for a few hours. He took a shower. He stole some of the homeowner's clothes to wear. And that just really freaks me out. Like, someone breaking into your home anyway is just a violation and that freaks me out. But the fact that he went and had a shower and then he's dressing in the homeowner's clothes. And then this next thing, I just can't believe this. This just tells you the kind of person that Wade is. So he's had a shower, he's got his new clothes on, and he sits on the sofa and he puts his feet up and he starts eating some popcorn. Yeah, and he just relaxes like he doesn't have a care in the world. And then he decides to phone up his biological dad, who he only ever phones when he needs some money or needs help out of a sticky situation. So he calls up his biological dad, Stephen, and he's like, Dad, I need your help. But Wade, he sounds very panicked, very frantic. He's very, almost excited. He's full of adrenaline. And his dad, Stephen, is like, why? Like, what is going on? And this is when Wade just straight up comes out with it and says, Dad, look, I need to tell you something. I've killed 2 people. And then he goes into excruciating detail about the murders. And Wade's dad has later said that the way Wade was talking about these murders and how excited he was, it was almost like Wade was expecting his dad to be proud of him. And of course, his dad was horrified and he said, why did you do this? Like, why? And Wade just responded, quote, I don't know, Dad. I don't know why I did it. I just wanted to. So then Wade's dad said, okay, I want to help you out. Where are you? So I can send an Uber to where you are to come and pick you up and then I'll help you. So Wade gives over the address of the home that he's broken into. But does his dad send an Uber? No. His dad dials 911 and tells the police exactly where his son is. So the police arrive at the scene, they break down the door, and they finally have Wade Wilson in handcuffs. They arrest him and bring him in for questioning for the assault on Mila and also the murder of Christine and then the murder of this second woman that they still don't know the identity of. So Wade agrees to talk to the police only if he gets a burger and fries. So the police give him what he wants, and then Wade gives a full confession. He confesses to everything. However, the police still do not know the identity of the second victim, Diane. They only know that he has confessed to this murder, but Wade, for some reason, he's not telling the police where he dumped Diane's body. And I'm not really sure why. Like, he's just made a full confession. It's like, what is he hiding at this point? But the police soon realized that a woman called Diane Ruiz has been reported missing. The police do suspect that Diane could be the second victim of Wade's. And unbelievably, the search for Diane lasts for 3 days. And it's just really frustrating. Like, why couldn't Wade have just told them where he hid the body instead of making Diane's family go through that agonizing wait to find out what had happened to her. And they found Diane's body on the third day because a single vulture was spotted over a wooded area. And police knew that vultures tend to circle around dead bodies. So at this point, the police now have enough to charge Wade with obviously the assault on Mila, but now the 2 murders. DNA evidence was found at both crime scenes. There were multiple witnesses. It was a very open shut case. However, at this point in October of 2019, it would take 5 more years for Wade Wilson to go to trial. And over those 5 years, he got up to a ton of antics. In 2020, he was actually caught trying to escape jail because he had tampered on the bars of his cell window. He then came out with a load of crazy ramblings to the media that he used to work for a human trafficking ring and that he quit that, like he doesn't do that anymore. And now that human trafficking ring are trying to frame him with these murders. He also got caught dealing drugs in prison. And then after this, he has now joined a prison gang, which is a white supremacist organization called The Unforgiven. So yeah, he's a really lovely person. And he now has covered his face in tattoos, which has made him very infamous. In particular, what he has tattooed on his face, because he has 2 swastikas on his face, one on his scalp and then one under his right eye. He also has the numbers 14 and 88 tattooed on his face, which are apparently code for white supremacists, one in which is related to Hitler. He also has white supremacist phrases tattooed onto his face, which are bred for war and trained to go. He also references Heath Ledger's Joker by having "Why So Serious" tattooed onto his face, as well as the Chelsea smile tattoo. And then it was in 2024 when Wade Wilson finally went to trial that it all blew up on social media, especially TikTok, because Wade Wilson was obviously back in the media headlines because of the trial, and some crazy people picked up on it and started to fangirl over him. And then one thing led to another, and he's kind of become TikTok famous. And I'm like, really? Like, really? People kept saying like how good looking he was. A lot of things were posted in support of him. Some posts had the hashtag Save Wade Wilson. I'm like, save him from who? And it's in particular the comments on these posts that are the most concerning. So many of these comments are like loads of heart emojis saying how he needs help, he's not guilty, how hot he is, oh my god, he's so good looking. And there are TikTok accounts out there dedicated in support of his innocence. And I'm like, what is going through your brain? In what world is Wade Wilson innocent? He has even confessed himself that he is a murderer. So it's not really adding up, is it? But these TikTok accounts are dedicated to posting updates about Wade Wilson. There was even one TikTok account, and oh my god, I swear, they organised a Q&A with Wade Wilson for Wade Wilson to answer over the phone from prison. And I'm like, really? Have you lost your mind? And Wade Wilson actually does this. He actually does this phone call Q&A like he is some sort of celebrity or influencer.
Is finding justice in my situation at one point or another to, you know, get that justice and then allow for me hopefully to see the world once again.
And I've listened to this Q&A. Wow, 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 wow. He is infuriating in so many ways. And some of the questions in this Q&A are like the real deep, meaningful questions. Like, what is your favorite music? What is your favorite memory?
Yeah, I do. So my favorite color is blue. So the most unusual place would be in the ocean. I just wanted to thank everybody, you know, for your worldwide support of me and having so much support and love and care and everything else for me just means more than anybody could ever know. I really appreciate everybody.
And it is just insane. Why are people celebrating and glorifying and trying to defend murderers. I just feel so sorry for every single victim, every single person that has had to come into contact with Wade Wilson. I feel sorry that they have to see things like this. But Wade Wilson's trial, it only lasted for 5 days. The prosecution brought in a load of witnesses, which included his ex-girlfriend, Mila, who described the horrific attack. Wade's biological dad, Stephen, also testified, and they also had a ton of DNA evidence. And Wade, he didn't really give that much of a defense. And to be honest, I'm surprised it even went to trial because he obviously confessed, but then he clearly pleaded not guilty. But regardless, Wade Wilson was found guilty on all charges. And when it came to the sentencing, the jury had to decide between the death penalty and life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, the defense have said that Wade does not deserve the death penalty because he has a brain impairment, which he has suffered because of his multiple head injuries, and that this brain injury, this brain impairment, hindered him from functioning like a regular, normal human being. And that Wade Wilson also possibly has a psychotic disorder. But then the prosecution have said, well, okay, but that still does not excuse his behavior. They also said that he did not have a psychotic disorder. So I don't know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but it does not excuse his behavior. And the jury agreed with the prosecution and they decided to sentence Wade Wilson to the death penalty. And this decision was only made a few weeks ago, like in June of 2024, I think. And since then, there has been another hearing arranged for the judge to decide whether it is appropriate to give the death penalty or not. So we don't actually know what Wade Wilson's sentence is right now, but it will either be the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. But either way, Wade Wilson will never be released from prison. And then after the guilty verdict came out and the possibility that he is getting the death penalty, as you can imagine, it blew up on TikTok again because people think that he is innocent for some reason. There's some fangirls out there that have even started petitions and fundraisers for him.
Wilson has received almost 4,000 messages in jail and more than 750 photos. So-called Let Wade Live letters have poured in to the judge. There's even an online petition that has more than 30,000 signatures.
It's just bizarre and very concerning. But anyway, that's enough about Wade Wilson now because I'm fed up of talking about him because quite frankly, that is what he wants. The real tragedy here is how many people have suffered at the hands of Wade Wilson for so many years, and in particular, the 2 murder victims of today's case. Christine Melton was described as being sweet, caring, and a lovely young woman. She loved her pets, was the best friend and carer to her mom, and the favorite aunt of her nieces and nephews. But most of all, Christine had big dreams of becoming a mother herself one day, a role her family says that she was born to play. She was taken far, far too soon. She was only 35 years old. Diane Ruiz was described as a heartwarming, caring, and proud mother to her 2 sons. She had an infectious laugh and would do anything for anybody. And she was soon to get married to her fiancé, as well as having so many more big plans for her 2 sons. She was taken far, far too soon. She was only 43 years old. And I also hope that Mila is doing okay as well from that horrific attack, and just everybody else as well, every other ex-partner of Wade Wilson's. I just hope that they are doing okay. So that brings us to the end of today's video. As always, let me know your thoughts, theories, and opinions, and don't forget to leave me your case suggestions in the comments down below because I always want to know what you want to hear next. Thank you again to Midas Merch for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.